Hello, my name is Nina. Welcome to my channel, Inside the Mind of a Human Predator. In this video, I wanted to do something a little different and analyze the maladaptive traits of a certain internet subculture. Now, if you spend any time on social media, you probably see and use memes, which are a summarized way of depicting certain parts of reality, and often they are humorous. So you probably have come across one particular meme that shows the dichotomy between the so-called Chad and a virgin. Now that particular meme shows the dichotomy between every kind of subculture, even animals, religion, and so forth. And I'm including an example here. So what this meme refers to originally is the so-called incel subculture, which is an abbreviation of involuntary celibate. In other words, it pertains to the self-professed inability of these incels to establish a viable long-term romantic partnership. In light of the upcoming murder trial of one such incel, Alec Manassian, in spring 2020, I thought it was interesting to have a look at what I believe to be the vulnerable or covert narcissistic traits of incels as is professed by them themselves. So first, as usual, I'm not a mental health professional of any kind, and I'm here expressing my personal opinions. So first, I'd like to have a look at vulnerable narcissistic traits versus grandiose narcissistic traits. And another caveat is that most individuals you encounter who are maladaptive and who seem to exhibit these traits on a long-term pervasive basis may not be at the level of a personality disorder. They may likely be subclinical. However, for all intents and purposes, if they're causing harm in your life, it doesn't matter whether there is a clinical diagnosis attached to this or not. And you have three choices. The worst choice is to have things go on as they are. The worst, but not the worst choice, is to modify your expectations in terms of what can and cannot happen in this particular interpersonal relationship, whether it's romantic, a friendship, a family member, or a workplace relationship. And the best case scenario is for you to remove yourself from the situation to the best of your ability. So, what are the traits of narcissism? In the last few years, they've certainly been popularized, luckily, for people to watch out for them. And they are grandiosity for the more commonly known grandiose narcissist, and hypersensitivity for the vulnerable or covert narcissist. We also have a lack of emotional empathy for both types. We have a sense of envy of others in general. There is a significant level of inflated self-importance and self-centeredness, which is a trait that belongs to both categories of narcissistic relational styles. Another important thing to remember is that these two relational styles, the grandiose narcissistic relational style and the vulnerable or the covert narcissistic relational style, are not two separate boxes or circles that can never intersect. They're more like a Venn diagram where there are certain overlaps that are the same or similar, and others are different. For instance, grandiosity that is very overtly expressed versus being hypersensitive and more socially awkward. At the same time, there is a certain level of oscillation and fluidity that may be present in each particular individual, regardless of the level of narcissistic traits they exhibit. So in my personal experience, I can think of certain individuals that when I met them initially, they appear to be, now thinking about it in hindsight, very vulnerable and socially awkward, and later on they began to exhibit more of the grandiose traits. So again, as a layperson, I now perceive that original perception as them being in narcissistic depletion. So now let's have a look at what these incels, these self-described involuntary celibates, actually believe. Now, they believe that there is a particular social hierarchy at place, that it's very rigid, and at the top of the hierarchy are those that could be roughly described as alpha males and alpha females, to which they refer as Chads and Stacys. Now, they clearly, the incels, display a significant degree of envy, speaking of narcissistic traits, toward these individuals, because they appear to have what they do not, or in their opinion cannot have, and that is a very easy way of establishing long-term romantic relationships. There are a number of traits and actions on the part of these self-described incels that demonstrate their sense of inflated self-opinion, even though it is hidden in terms of their social awkwardness and the way it's displayed publicly. So their perception of women in a very caricaturesque way is quite misogynistic, and it also shows their inflated sense of sense, which is of course linked to their sense of entitlement, thinking that women owe them that relationship without having really to do much themselves. They also refer to these caricatures of Chads and Stacys, who are the alpha males and females, as dumb, which then obviously demonstrates their own hidden sense of superiority. In addition to that, incels refer to themselves as gentlemen, which means that those who are, in their perception, higher on the hierarchy, the Chads, Stacys, and the normies, are not gentlemen. Once again, this demonstrates their hidden sense of superiority and an inflated self-perception. Another interesting thing, in addition to their envy of those who are, in their opinion, higher on the social hierarchy, is their sense of resentment. And in the case of some of these self-described incels who've gone out and committed violent acts, like Alec Manassian, this also demonstrates that this resentment can transform into narcissistic rage, and it has very serious real-life consequences. One of the most interesting aspects of this incel subculture, in the way it demonstrates the vulnerable narcissistic relational style, is their belief of removing hierarchies. Now, whereas a grandiose narcissist or someone with that relational style would believe in climbing up the hierarchy and then dominating it from the top, the vulnerable narcissist, or an individual with vulnerable narcissistic traits, believes in removing those hierarchies altogether, because in their perception they are not fair. And again, in the case of violent acts that have been committed by some of these self-described incels, that removal of hierarchies had taken a physical form which amounted to some very serious criminal acts. So I hope you find this video interesting. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.